Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on NFB Jernigan Institute programs. I'm Conchita Hernandez. I want to let you know about a couple of things. We do have a chat feature. In this chat box, there's a survey to fill out about this webinar. If you can please do that, that would be wonderful. All of our sessions are posted on our YouTube channel, so there's also a link to our YouTube channel. You can watch all of our past webinars. I want to let you know about some coming up webinars. On the 14th of May, we are going to be having a webinar on accessible science. On the 20th, we are going to have Diane Wormsley, who created the iEnable curriculum. On the 21st, we're going to have beginning switch access on the iPad. And on the 23rd, we are going to have a webinar on BARD. So feel free to join. All of our webinars are free. Let us know your comments. Please fill out our survey. And if you have a question or anything along during the session, feel free to paste it in the chat box and I will be monitoring that. So today we have Anil Lewis, who is the Executive Director of the NFB Jernigan Institute. And I will let him kind of introduce himself a little bit more and let us know about all the great programs that are happening. So thank you for joining us.
Well, Conchita, thanks for providing me with the opportunity to talk about the projects and programs of the Federation as they apply to teaching. My name is Anil Lewis. I'm the Executive Director of Blindness Initiatives for the National Federation of the Blind. And for those of you who may not be as aware, the National Federation of the Blind knows that blindness is not the characteristic that defines you or your future. See, every day we raise expectations for blind people because we realize it's the low expectations that are held for blind people that are really the true obstacles. And we believe that blindness is not what holds you back, that you can still succeed in life. And through that, we implement a host of projects and programs, which I like to say cover from womb to tomb around blindness. And I'll talk about specifically in as much detail as possible our education programs, but we believe that there's a degree of intervention and advocacy that's required in order to allow blind people to live the lives we want. So as the Director of Blindness Initiatives, my job is to manage a dynamic team of professionals to implement the projects and programs that I'm going to tell you about. And if for any reason you have any questions or want to reach out to us, please visit nfb.org, and most of those questions could be answered, but feel free to contact me directly. So I want to start in kind of a chronological order. So we start working on impacting the lives of blind people, really you could say before they're even born. We have a huge national organization of parents of blind children. And we believe that we should first empower the parents of blind children with an attitude that sets high expectations for their children. We think that those parents should be motivated to set the same expectations they would for their blind child that they would if their child was sighted. And that's kind of an ongoing, growth, but through the natural supports and the peer mentoring through our National Organization of Blind Parents, parents of blind children, we can continue to foster that. So what we do is we provide them with the tools that they can start working on instilling confidence and ability into their blind youth as early as infants and toddlers. Our early childhood intervention programs consist of two primary, one directed toward literacy and the other directed toward independent travel. Our Braille Reading Pals is a program that we send a twin vision book. That means a book that has Braille on one side and print on the other. That really encourages the parent to read with their child. So the sighted parent's reading with the printed material and the infant or toddler is at least experiencing the Braille. We don't expect them to read Braille, as an infant, but just making sure that those particular books are in their space and that Braille is a familiar tool to them. So as they become the age appropriate for learning how to read, then it's not introducing a whole new concept into their life. So the Braille Reading Pals provide them with the Twin Vision books. It comes with a cute little plush pal that the students can, that the children can use as kind of their friend and know that it's time to read. And we also send quarterly support through a newsletter called The Bee that gives the parents some really interesting and fun activities that they can integrate Braille into their everyday lives, working with their child to make them more literate. Again, dispelling the myths around Braille that it's too difficult and that it's not useful, because we recognize that Braille is an important tool, so we want to introduce that to the student as early as possible. The other thing we like to do is we like to make the parent recognize that they're the first travel instructor for their child. not a certified O&M instructor, of course, but recognizing that they should be encouraging their child to move around and explore their environment. And in so many instances, so many parents think that it's safer to keep their kids in an isolated space. And that's really not true. So encouraging them to learn the proper skills to engage in their environment is really important. And one of those things that we do to help foster that is we provide them, of course, with materials from other parents that show their travel along this particular path, but we also provide them with, well, it's a long white cane in our concept, but to the toddlers, it's a cute little cane. Again, that's only to get them more familiar with their environment. We're not expecting toddlers to get up and say, Mom, I'm gonna go down to the store, I'll be right back. We really want them to just be familiar with this cane as a tool. We've heard stories that some blind children are not really exposed to a white cane until they're graduating high school. And that really significantly delays them in being able to travel independently in their environments and be competitive with their academic peers. So we try to make sure that the parents really enforce that need for cane travel. So one of the things that we've noticed, again, people say that we really focus on Braille, and we do, because we recognize the importance of Braille. The statistics we've seen is that although there's a quote unquote 70% unemployment rate of blind individuals, that the 30% who are employed, overwhelming majority of them, close to 90% of them, are actually knowledgeable about Braille. So we want to make sure that these kids are instilled with that tool. And in many instances, due to so many different reasons, many children are not being taught Braille in the school system. And that's unfortunate. Our statistics say that 10 or less than 10% of students in the school system are taught Braille. And the Federation is really a proponent of Braille because of the importance of literacy, even to the point where we also recognize the importance of making kids what we refer to as dual media learners, dual media readers. So in those instances where the child may have low vision, in some instances, we also recognize the importance for that child to also learn Braille. A lot of people kind of misstate this particular position that we are Braille-centric and don't recognize that children can still use their limited vision to do the task. We believe in putting as many tools in the toolbox as possible. So if there's a student who has low vision, who can read, and for any number of reasons, whether it be eye fatigue, whether it be coming into contact with different fonts or representations of print, their vision may not be the tool that they can use in order to be effective and competitive again. So we recognize that then that student should have the option of being able to read non-visually using Braille. We highlighted this by establishing the National Reading Media Assessment, which I believe is also one of the presentations through this professional development tool. Just making sure that the kids have the option of choosing the tool that's best for them in whatever situation they may come across. Just as an aside, I lost my sight when I was 25 due to retinitis pigmentosa. And there was a time that I was able to read using low vision and the CCTV. And I was employed at the time. I had a lot of case files to read. And luckily for me, as I was provided training, I was able to learn Braille. So in the instance of my case files, I would have, this is old traditional files before everything became so digital, in a filing cabinet. And I was able to Braille the labels on my client case files so that I didn't have to get down on my hands and knees with the magnifier to read those labels. I was able to reach down and pull the file out using Braille and put it under my CCTV and then use my sight, of course, to read the information. And then when I eventually had to use Braille as my primary reading medium, it wasn't relearning something that I was already able to learn during that transitional process of losing sight. And I'm also saying this only to say that we recognize this importance, and we recognize that due to so many reasons that we could talk about, many kids who are in that situation, who have low vision, that's the primary and only reading medium that they're taught in the school system. So we said that we want to help kids and parents and teaching professionals recognize the importance and the utility of Braille, even for those students. So we created the Braille Enrichment and Literacy Through Learning program, our NFB Bell program, which is a 2-week experience that allows the students to interact in a variety of different ways with Braille, reading, journaling, but also in some fun ways, making cupcakes and using M&Ms to put Braille on the cupcakes. So it makes it a fun kind of experiential learning that really encourages kids to learn to read Braille and also dispels the myths around the utility of it. So our Braille, NFB Bell program is right now probably in over 30 states and probably over 40 programs. We impact over 300, closer to 400 now students every year with this program. And the goal is to get them interested in Braille and hopefully get them to go back to their school systems and add Braille into their into their IEPs. So I've already talked briefly about the National Reading Media Assessment, and we talk about that, I guess, in another professional development piece. So one of the things we're also doing is making sure that our blind kids can be competitive with their sighted peers in all of these emerging opportunities, academic and professional opportunities. And one right now area is the STEM area, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. We had so many horror stories of blind students not being able to take advantage of STEM because one of our leaders in the organization told a story about how he was in the 3-man team in his biology class, and one person actually did the cutting, the other person took the pieces and put them on the board, and then there was one person that was the observer. And he, of course, the blind student was the observer. The irony of that is a whole nother presentation. But we want our kids to be actively engaged in these STEM opportunities. So we've created a host of different science programs. We've had our Youth Slam, which we brought 200 blind kids in from across the country here to our national office in Baltimore with Johns Hopkins University. We've also done this with the University of Maryland and with Towson University as well. And we have these kids for a week long building and launching rockets, dissecting sharks, doing nanoscience, programming robots, building bridges, all of those things from mechanical and electrical to computer science, really showing them the tools that are necessary for them to be competitive. And then they take those skills back home, and even more so, they take that attitude back home. They come with a natural curiosity, and they leave with the tools and the attitude that can have them self-advocate in their educational environments to a way that they can actually pursue STEM careers. And as a result of many of our science programming, we've gotten individuals employed at FBI as forensic audiologists, working at some of the major technology firms, Apple, Google, Amazon. So we're really trying to create opportunities that otherwise wouldn't exist without our programming. And we also most recently have been awarded our second federal grant, and we're in the process of executing the deliverables under that grant. It's called Spatial Awareness and Blindness Engineering Research. And it's really a program or project that's funded through NSF that allows us to bring kids in here for what we call our NFB EQs, National Federation of Blind Engineering Quotient Programs, or STEM EQs. And for this particular project, we have kids coming in and they're basically learning everything related to architecture and drafting, which is really kind of interesting. So we have non-visual tools that allow kids to draft. We teach them not only just the drafting component, but also understanding the policies and procedures around easements and all these other different things I can't talk to you. It's well over my level. The kids are so impressive. And at one point, when we bring in a cohort of 30 for each of our STEM EQ activities, we have an exhibit where the students can actually put together their representation of the structure that they're going to build, using the tools to create a 3D representation. And we go around and we visit the tables, and we get them to explain. And these are high school age students. We get them to explain their project. And I recall in the last iteration, I went by and sat at this one table with this young lady, and she was saying, notice how the corners of my structure are curved. Research shows that curved corners create a calming environment in rooms. And then notice how my windows are shaded. Now this is shaded to not just to take away from the sunlight, but it removes the hazardous radioactive whatever from the sun, but still allows the heat. And I'm like, wow, she was able to understand this in a way that I wasn't able to understand. Again, we're preparing these high school students to pursue these degrees in post-secondary education and hopefully end up in careers. An interesting part I'll add around our science and technology, engineering, and mathematics programming is that we do have kids that go through this, and remarkably enough, they come out and they say, well, I don't want to pursue a career in STEM. And many people think that that's a failure, but we count that as a success. Because so many times blind students make decisions about what they want to pursue based on society's perception of whether they can do it or not. And usually the answer is no. We have so many stories of blind people being told they can't be lawyers. And now we're getting blind kids being told they can't be engineers. But for a blind kid to actually have this experience, recognize that it's truly possible, and then truly understand what it's going to take in order to be successful in this career, and also what that career would look like once they do pursue it, and then be able to make an informed, educated decision that that's not the career track that they want to pursue, is a great thing, because we want to create opportunities for kids to really get some information that they can make really good decisions on what careers they want to pursue based on their interests, skills, and abilities. I'll also add really quickly, part of the program we're using the MCT, and it's a multi-cutting test, but basically cutting a three-dimensional object in half, across a plane, and determining what that two-dimensional representation would be. So if you cut a sphere across the horizontal plane, the resulting two-dimensional image is going to be a circle. If you cut a cube, it's going to be primarily a quadrilateral of some sort, whether it be a square, trapezoid, whatever. But the three-dimensional objects are much more complex than just those simple geometric shapes. So the recognizing what that two-dimensional representation or object would be upon completion is really, it's called mental cutting test. It's a mental cutting test. In order to make this particular piece accessible to blind students, we took the two-dimensional drawings of these three-dimensional objects that were used prior, and we actually used 3D printers to create the 3D objects themselves. And then what we found out is, in our effort to make this particular activity accessible to blind students, we ended up creating a tool that helped even sighted students benefit from it, because we had a test of this, and one of the sighted teachers had difficulty determining what the resulting two-dimensional object would be from the pictures, from the drafted images. Gave her the three-dimensional object. She was able to experience it in a more multimodal fashion, and then she was able to easily determine what that resulting two-dimensional image. I count those as win-wins. When the work that we do to create opportunities for blind people helps everyone, that's a real big win-win. All of this is supported to the core of what the Federation is. I told you about our blind parents. That's a mentoring piece. We also have our National Association of Blind Students, and that's the largest network of blind students in the country. And they have an annual convention of sorts along with our national convention. And it's a tremendous peer mentoring opportunity between blind students and potential blind students, college students specifically. And we try to make sure that our kids are very well prepared for that post-secondary opportunity. Many kids in the K through 12 system now who are able to get access to those materials, Braille, et cetera. Some of them are using Braille note takers like the Braille Note. And that's a very, very useful tool in the educational environment. But in many instances, we found that many of these students are not being prepared for post-secondary education because they're never really taught how to use a computer. And to go into a post-secondary environment with the amount of working and research that you have to do on the internet, using a traditional computer, learning the productivity suites of the Microsoft Office are essential to their success. So they hear those firsthand stories of the frustration that many of the students who may have been not quite as prepared for post-secondary education, and they can learn from the mistakes others have made so they don't make the same mistakes. And then also they can share in the strategies that have evolved through just the tenacity of our blind students so that they don't have to be as innovative in meeting some of their own educational needs. They learn how to work effectively with the Disability Student Services Office. They learn how to interact with their professors who may have low expectations on their participation in that post-secondary environment. There's really no substitute, no way that it can be done other than that informal kind of organic exposure to your peers. So that National Association, our National Association of Blind Students is really a powerful group. And I already talked about our National Organization of Parents of Blind Children. Just as an aside, talking about some of the other things that we do supporting students along this way, is we recognize, again, coming back to Braille, how important Braille is, but we need to have professionals that are there and ready, able to transcribe the Braille, so the textbooks, et cetera. So we, under a contract with the National Library Service, actually administer the Braille Transcription Certification Program. So we are processing individuals through this program. They have to go through a rigorous lesson that's graded, well, a series of lessons that are graded, and they end up eventually getting their certification to produce Braille. We can never have enough. To also support students toward their post-secondary educational aspirations, the National Federation of the Blind offers 30 scholarships annually to blind students across the country. And it's just, if you go through our Braille Monitor, which is online at nfb.org, you can see in, I think, our August, September issues every year, the list of the 30 scholarship winners. And it's just amazing, the diversity of the scholarship class, the variety of the different post-secondary educational pursuits that they have, and also the resulting careers that they engage in upon their graduation. But the scholarships range from $3,000 to $12,000. And as part of the scholarship program, we bring those students to our national convention, but bringing back to what the core is. The money is great. It's also supplemented with some of our partners with some additional money and some technology. But the real benefit of bringing the students in through our national scholarship program is the mentoring that they get through that convention experience and ongoing. So as teachers, we encourage you to continue to send individuals in our direction so that they can apply for the scholarship. It is a very competitive scholarship program, but by putting them in that particular system, then we can get them engaged and also make them aware of other opportunities like our STEM EQs, et cetera, that can help with their personal, academic, and professional growth. So we have also helped students as they transition again into their post-secondary environment by creating tools that they can access. We have a self-advocacy and higher education toolkit that's free and available on the web that also kind of presents some strategies and techniques and information that help students be their own best self-advocate in the post-secondary education environment. We have tools that help the higher education institutions themselves meet the needs of the blind students, because we found that a lot of colleges and universities don't quite meet the need, but it's not them not wanting to or not trying to. They need assistance in helping to understand what that is. So we provide a higher education accessibility online resource as well, and that's free and accessible through our nfb.org website. And if there's any programs that I'm talking about here that you're interested in, or if you're interested in getting the full list of the things that I'm talking about, please reach out to me, or maybe Conchita can make this particular file readily available. So we're also in the process now of creating a robust community of practice of teachers of blind students. If I can take just a quick minute here. Teachers of blind students is what we use as a professional name. More commonly, people are referred to as the teachers of the visually impaired. I had an interesting conversation with a TVI, wondering whether they were offended by our choice to use teacher of blind students. And it was an interesting learning experience, I think, for both of us. So when I asked her, she says, no. She says, it's just that I'm a teacher of students that, you know, are all visually impaired, not just blind students. And there was an opportunity for me to educate her that the National Federation of the Blind uses blind as a characteristic that encompasses everyone who can't see through normal vision or with corrective eyeglasses. So even those low vision students, we still refer to as blind students, because we recognize that it's helpful for them to learn non-visual skills as well that will complement their use of their low vision. So just letting her know that we're not talking about just students that are totally blind when we say teachers of blind students. We're just really trying our best to reinforce the need for the learning of all the non-visual access skills that a student can, because even if they have residual vision, again, fatigue or any number of circumstances could potentially make using a non-visual tool to access information much easier and much more productive than using the vision that they have. So we're creating a robust community of practice of individuals that share in that philosophy, and then that way we can have more direct access to these teachers and really keep them abreast of the innovative techniques and strategies and the programs that we offer to students. So to complement some of the ongoing projects that I've talked about, we intermittently have a lot of different conferences. We, in I think 2017, had our Braille Literacy in the 21st Century Conference, which brought in teachers of blind students, teachers of the visually impaired. We had a few students, I believe, and some parents, but it was mostly for the professionals. And we brought them in and we talked about everything around blindness and education, from Braille through technology, through assessments. And it's a really interesting and engaging conference, and we hope to continue to do those periodically as well. We on the flip side of that, or on the complementary bookend of that, we also work with blind rehab professionals that are, you know, these kids are going to transition into an environment where they want to benefit from state rehabilitation agencies, the services that they provide. So we offer our Dare to Be Remarkable conference. And with that conference, we were really able to focus on a lot of structured discovery techniques. That's really kind of the landmark philosophy around our adult rehabilitation strategies. Is called structured discovery, and just implementing that in a way so that individuals who are providing O&M, technology, home economics, all those types of services in an adult rehabilitation environment or those transitional environments can benefit from our lived experience as blind people toward the professional certifications that we have provided and endorsed, and also just the philosophy that we instill throughout our training. So in addition to that, with the advent of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, there's really been an emphasis on pre-employment transitional services, which is wonderful. And you'll notice through the projects and programs that I just described, the Federation has already been working really well with transition age youth through gap filling through our programs that we provide and our National Association of Blind Students. But it's nice to know now that through the act itself, the need for providing more intense services to that age group, 14 to 22, those transition age youth, has really been good. We appreciated that. So we're trying to now create more programming to take advantage of this window of opportunity. So we've created our NFB Career Mentoring Program. And our Career Mentoring Program focuses on meeting the needs that are defined on the pre-employment transition services of the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, but also with an overlay, an underpinning, or an infusion throughout around the NFB philosophy and our attitude around training. The thing that makes our particular programming different from others is we have the same type of experiential learning opportunities, but in all of that, it's done by successful blind adults. We have successful blind adult mentors engaged throughout the programming and the service provision. We also encourage the interaction between those successful blind adults and our blind mentees between the programming. Because some of the disadvantages of the traditional programming is maybe a really robust weekend or maybe even a week of experience and exposure, but then those kids may go another year before they actually have a similar experience. So we try to make sure they have the robust experience through that definite retreat or weekend or week-long experience, but then they're continue to be supported through conversations and interactions with successful blind adults. And so that next time we're able to bring them into that formal environment. So our National Federation of the Blind Career Mentoring Program is really, I think, doing a good job of instilling our philosophy into the professional training environment. And we encourage you to refer individuals that you feel are successful blind adults to go apply, to be mentors, and for students in that transition age youth. And it doesn't necessarily have to be restricted to that. We like to mentor on whatever level, but for this particular program, it's 14 to 22, to have them go apply as mentees as well. Again, the portal for all of this is to start at nfb.org. So we have, to complement all of this, we recognize that technology seems to be the game changer. It really evens the playing field. And we try to make sure that as the National Federation of the Blind that we get exposed to every piece of access technology that's out there. So we have our International Braille Technology Center, which has $2.5 million at least worth of assistive technology equipment that blind people use every day. And we use this as an opportunity for us to test the wheels and give the manufacturers feedback. We use it as an opportunity for our members and friends to come through and take a look at the technology if they're interested in getting some hands-on exposure to it. We do more and more writing around it to give people objective perspectives on the various technologies and also useful strategies on how to exploit the technology. So we recognize that that's important. So our International Braille Technology Center is our incubator for all of that access technology. We also, through our Center of Excellence in Nonvisual Access, offer a variety of different programs and projects that really focus on the variety of different ways that technology is used and impacts the lives of blind people. We recognize that accessible textbooks now is really a growing piece that has definite utility. As a blind college student, I remember having to use a scanner and software to actually physically turn each page of my textbook and scan it in order for me to have an accessible copy. But now through our relationships with publishers and other vendors, I think that Conchita also mentioned that there's a discussion around Bookshare, which is another way of getting that accessible textbook. We're just making sure that the accessible textbook continues to grow to a place where the term of art now is so that it's born accessible, meaning that we're working with the publishers to make sure that as they produce the books, since EPUB is now a really robust way of providing the information, that information, when it's done, is already born accessible. So the collaboration of our partners and the publishers are really moving toward that, so that one day it really will be, once that edition of that current textbook is published, that a blind person really truly will be able to access it at the same time and at the same cost as their sighted colleagues or peers. We also provide accessibility boutiques, and this is specifically here in Maryland, so I was glad that you guys are really Maryland-centric. But we provide free boutiques around technology. We just recently had one on the accessibility of Blackboard, which is a learning management system that's used in a lot of colleges. We've done some on creating accessible documents, which we find very helpful. Many of the interactions with a lot of the school systems, individuals are using creative ways to make things accessible. They're going through the process of creating a Word document and printing it out, and then in order to make it accessible to the blind student, they take it through an OCR software package, and it, that's, so we try to make sure that people understand, one, you can use the contemporary tools, Microsoft Word, to actually create documents so that they're readily accessible. And in many instances, if you mark the written document up well, it's very easy to send through a Braille embossing conversion software to make an accessible document in Braille as well. So we're trying to make sure that people are aware of the tools and strategies that can help them do it in a way that's not only more efficient, but also more accurate. Because anytime you have to run something through OCR, you're not going to get 100% representation. It's going to need to be some cleaning up. So why clean up a document where it can already be made accessible from the beginning? And this is the same document, of course, that the sighted students are going to be accessing. So we're working now to develop relationships with the colleges and universities here in Maryland to teach those content developers, whether it be a graduate research assistant or the professor, him or herself, making sure that as they're doing that and creating that document, just with few simple keystrokes, that are still going to make their documents aesthetically pleasing and meet the needs of the sighted student, and they can make it accessible for their blind students as well. We're really planning a conference around Teach Accessibility. Teach Accessibility is a movement that says that all these individuals that are graduating with degrees in IT, with just an integration of accessibility and their already existing formal training, they can come out with those degrees in a way that makes them so much more marketable in today's environment, because the big four, Apple, Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, are all looking for people with this skill set. And essentially, it's nothing more than the training that they will receive. One of my friends, Jeff over at Yahoo, says it, no, at Facebook says it very clearly. He says, accessible coding is just good coding. So in the past, what we've done is we've created IT professionals that are good coders and never really talked to them about accessibility. But if we integrate accessibility into the normal classroom the way it should be, they come out with that tool already in their toolbox. It's not an adjunct, it's not an add-on, it's not an additional certificate. It's just what they do every day. And once we do that, the world is going to change with respect to access for blind individuals. You're not going to have to worry about going back and retrofitting and fixing a website, because individuals that are coding the websites are going to, just by nature and their training, develop it in a way that's more accessible to blind people. So we're looking at hopefully hosting one of those. And in the meantime, we're offering what we call our Accessibility Inclusion Fellowship, where we've identified 3 professors in the Maryland area already who are already professors in the IT field, and they're going to be working to already change their syllabus and their courses in a way that infuses accessibility in the learning that they provide for their students. And again, these students that graduate with this enhanced learning are going to be much more marketable in today's workforce. We're also working on trying to make sure the developers of apps also get that same. So we're looking at planning to put together a developer symposium that teaches people how to develop apps on the Android and the iOS platform that are accessible. I mean, I do so much now with my smartphone, everything from banking to research to reading. And that's because those apps are accessible. But there's so many more apps out there that I really like to be able to take advantage of that unfortunately are not. But with a little training, the same developers that have developed those apps, can really make them readily accessible. And you want to see the results of our partnership. We continue to partner with those disruptive technologies like the Lyfts and the Ubers of the world, and some of the other programs that are out there too. So again, by providing the Accessible Developers Conference, we can educate developers about the tools that they can use to make their apps accessible. We also conduct research in a way that's robust for our partners. So much research has been done in the past by blindness professionals, and including blind people in the research was an afterthought, or they would come to us for the guinea pigs for testing. So we created our Research Advisory Council that if you are a researcher out there and you want to conduct research, you're allowed and able to contact us during that design process, and we can help refine your your research question. We can help you really integrate some contemporary methodology or practice to it, and also make sure that once the result is complete, it's going to be providing something that's going to be helpful within the field of blindness, that's going to create opportunities for blind people, and not just end up creating a research project for the research project, period. So we offer that as well. It's called our Research Advisory Council. We created a accessibility switchboard, which allows us to educate those businesses and educational institutions and public entities around the fundamental access needs in so many ways, not just website and apps, but just through their whole, we call it enculturating accessibility throughout the whole organization. So from hiring to make sure that process is accessible and doesn't discriminate, from onboarding to making sure that work environments don't create obstacles for blind people to be successful, to creating opportunities for upward mobility, all those different pieces we try to work with. And Accessibility Switchboard talks about there's some fundamental tools of kind of reality checking your organization to make sure that you, as best as you possibly can, are creating an inclusive, accessible, welcoming environment. I'll talk about one more technology piece, then I'll move on to closing, because I think that there's probably need some time for some Q&A. We offer, not offer, but we're also working in the autonomous vehicle space. So we're making sure that the cars of the future that are going to be somewhat self-driving are also accessible for blind people to navigate and operate. It would be unfortunate that at this particular window of opportunity that we end up creating a new transportation solution that yet again leaves blind people in a transportation desert. All the space is wide open. We can redefine what vehicles look like, and we can make sure that the technology that's there is accessible. And again, this is another instance where the accessible technology is not just beneficial for blind individuals, it's going to help sighted people be better operators as well. So since our Blind Driver Challenge back in 2011, where we actually created non-visual interfaces that allowed our current president, Mark Riccobono, to actually drive a car as a blind person independently on the Daytona International Speedway, we've been partners with a lot of different automobile manufacturers and technology developers in this autonomous vehicle space, and we hope that we can continue to maintain those relationships through the finish line and make sure that once those autonomous vehicles are introduced into the market in a real way, that the same car that the sighted people use is going to be the same car that a blind person can use as well. We have a host of other technology programs and projects throughout what we do. We recognize again that that's what's important, making sure that the technology is accessible so that blind people can continue to be competitive in these environments. And in order to do that, we make sure that blind people are engaged, not only just in helping people frame research, but also in the development of other technologies that are out there. We have what's called our Blind Users Innovating and Leading Design program, our BUILD program, where we have a host of individuals that have a skill set from novice through expert, that we can really help manufacturers of that new wave, innovative technology, get feedback again from the development. We just recently helped someone, a company assess a digital locker. We've been helping individuals with accessible kiosk solutions and making sure that they're usable and also accessible. And again, when we have individuals across the spectrum that are really experiencing the technology while it's being developed, the resulting technology is not only just going to be accessible to blind people, it's going to provide a more usable, comfortable, simpler experience for everybody that has to use it. And then we like to try to award or reward our partners who've really gone above and beyond to really create an inclusive environment of accessibility throughout their whole organization through our Strategic Non-Visual Access Partnership Program. And you can get information about that as well. That's more kind of a corporate recognition for individuals that kind of develop it. Another area that we've been working on is making sure that there's access to graphical information in non-visual fashion. So we've hosted a tactile graphics symposium. We've hosted tactile arts symposiums. We're working on helping develop curriculum that helps blind students actually understand how to manipulate information, create tactile representations of information. So that whole tactile graphics, tactile arts environment is something that we're really working on in a robust fashion as well. We have a host of other resources here. If you ever want to visit, you're welcome. Please just call us and schedule an appointment. We'll be happy to show you around. You can see our Jacobus Timbrook Library, which has the history of the organized blind movement. We call it Everything Non-Medical About Blindness. And it's also turning into more of a museum piece too. So there's a host of different, I'll call them exhibits for now, that really describe some of the progress that we've made as an organization. For example, the prototype dune buggy that we used in preparation for our blind driver challenge, where we had blind students driving a dune buggy independently on the University of Maryland parking lot. It's down there so people can take a look at it. A display of the Mount Everest expedition. So Eric Weinmeyer was the first blind person, I think to date, probably still the only blind person to summit Mount Everest. He's really summited all the top peaks in the world. But we helped fund that particular expedition and support it. And there's a display down there that, you know, it's representative of that experience with a lot of information there. So we encourage you to come take a look. We'd be happy. We love showing the place off. We own a whole city block here in Baltimore, Maryland, in the Federal Hill area, South Baltimore. We moved in 1978. We purchased the building for about $532,000. Now the building is worth well over $25 million. It's all paid for. We, as a nonprofit, want to act responsibly, so we don't have individuals who donate to our organization. They're not paying anything on mortgage or mortgage interest. They go right to our programs and projects that I've just described. So we've had a lot of work that we've done around advocacy. This is quality of life for blind people in general, moving across that womb to tomb spectrum more as an adult here. We've made sure that blind people have the right to a private independent vote by advocating for the Help America Vote Act, and still continue to work with voting machine manufacturers now to make sure that that technology remains accessible. We have our Journal of Blindness and Research, which is our peer-reviewed journal that talks about the research that we have been made aware of, and we have individuals who, if you're interested in publishing in our Journal of Blindness, Innovation, and Research, feel free to submit. It's peer-reviewed, and it's online as a free resource as well. And then I'll offer this. Being good community partners throughout the Baltimore area, we offer what's called our Transformational Seminars. We bring professionals in. We teach them about blindness in a way that exposes them and gives them some immersion. And we create a safe environment for them to ask the questions that everybody wants to ask, right? And then give them real honest and open answers. That's the only way we recognize that the side of the community who's curious but afraid of being offensive or being wrong, who's curious about learning more, create an environment where they do. We've done a great job of growing our relationships with our local community here by providing those. So if you're in a local area, and we've offered this to businesses, some governmental entities, et cetera, and you want to bring in your staff or community in to have that experience, usually about 4 hours, to learn more about blindness and the tools and techniques and strategies blind people use to live their lives every day, feel free to contact us. And just as a close, I'll say we offer here a independence market, which is not a huge kind of Amazon experience, but it's a market that provides fundamental tools around blindness, everything from slates and styluses, which are tools like the pencil and paper for sighted individuals, to long white canes for independent travel, cooking utensils that blind people use to cook, games that are adapted so that blind people can play them along with their sighted peers, labels and things that we use every day to just make our world accessible. So that's here as well, and you're welcome to come and purchase items. And again, I could go through so many things, but that would take too much time. I think I may not have left as much time for questions as I should have, but I'll yield at this point, Conchita, if that's okay. If not, I can still go through a whole litany of other programs and projects.
Yes, thank you so much, Emil. That was all really, really informative. I don't know if there's any questions. There's no questions in the chat box. Mm-hmm. But what I will do as well is I will email out the presentation to everybody who registered with your contact info, if that's fine, mm-hmm. In case anybody has any other questions or information.
And I rushed through quite a bit of it, so I hope that it was good enough. And if you want copies, I have a little streamlined document that highlights these and other programs with links to the places on the web that you can get even more information.
Awesome. Yes, if you could send that to me, then I can send it out to all the participants and include it on the YouTube video. That would be great.
Okay, I'll do that.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Emil. And please fill out the webinar survey. And that's it. Thank you.